What's on your radar, Ryan?
Well, on Friday, a familiar pattern played out. The Labor Department released a very, very good jobs report, and the media continued hyping what a lousy economy Biden is overseeing. Now, surveys show that the American people, by huge margins, agree with that media's take. They say that they don't like the direction of the economy. But on Friday, the unemployment rate fell nearly half a percentage point, down to 4.2%, which is a full point lower than the CBO estimated we'd be at by now. Wages were up nearly 5% compared to a year ago, with bigger wage gains most concentrated among the working class. Hourly wages for restaurant workers, for instance, were up more than 13%. The economy added 210,000 jobs, which was less than what was expected, but two important caveats. One, the economy is in major flux, and those numbers are certainly wrong, and they're very likely to be adjusted heavily upward, as all the previous months have been. And two, workers are getting more hours. As economist Dean Baker noted, the increase in hours that were given to workers would have translated to 630,000 new jobs if everybody's hours stayed the same. Also, the child tax credit and other subsidies in the American Rescue Plan, along with Trump's stimulus bills, have left people's savings accounts fatter than they've been in a generation. And people are getting $250 to $300 every month for each kid in the household. In other words, it has practically never been easier to find a job, wages and hours are growing steadily, and people have more money in the bank. So how can we explain this apparent paradox? Why do people keep saying the economy sucks even as wages are rising and unemployment is falling? Now, it's tempting to say that the answer lies in the fact that since the 1970s, we went some 40 years without any real wage growth, and that if wages had kept up with productivity, people would be making a lot more than they are now, so that's why people are sour on the economy. But that wouldn't explain why they're more sour now than they were at many other times over the last 40 years. What I think this paradox reveals is that politicians are making a mistake in thinking that people think of themselves first as workers. For workers, the economy is going well, but for consumers, not so much. And the American people, and importantly, American voters, now think of themselves as consumers before they think of themselves as workers. If people are asked how they think the economy is doing, the question they're answering is how well is it serving you? If you order something on Amazon, is it in stock and showing up at your door the next day at the price you're used to? Can you get a cheap Uber quickly? Are gas and grocery prices up? When people walk into a restaurant and one of the sections is closed because they're short-staffed, that's the kind of thing people mean when they say the economy is going badly. It's not serving them the way they're used to. The transformation of the American people from workers to consumers goes back a long way, but it picked up its real strength right after World War II. Workers during the war had either been serving overseas or working long hours at home for much less pay than they could command in order to support the war effort. When the war ended, the pot boiled over, with workers demanding to be compensated for their sacrifices. They had been essential to the war effort, and now they wanted to be treated like it. The great post-war strike wave of 1945 and 1946 saw millions of workers walk off the job like nothing that had ever been seen in the U.S. Capital fought back, and voters responded by handing Congress to the Republicans for the first time in practically forever. And Republicans used the opportunity to pass the Taft-Hartley Act, which was used to destroy the labor movement. Instead of workers taking control of their own destinies, American policymakers bought off the GIs and the rising middle class, the white element of it anyway, with the GI Bill, the construction of endless suburbs and highways, and the advent of mass consumer society. So this was the deal. The bosses would fully control the workplace, and you'd be miserable at your job, but you'd have a decent amount of job security, and your paycheck could buy you a house with a yard and the endless stream of new gadgets that this new economy would produce. You had no autonomy at work, but you did at home, where you were king of the castle. And so the way you spent your money, not the way you earned it, became the way you identified yourself. You were a consumer. 50 years later, when our nation was attacked again, President George W. Bush urged us all to do our true patriotic duty, to shop.
Now, the American people have got to go about their business. We cannot let the terrorists achieve the objective of frightening our nation to the point where we don't conduct business, where people don't shop. That's their intention.
If we didn't storm the walls of Walmart on Black Friday, Bush warned, the terrorists would win.
When they struck, they wanted to create an atmosphere of fear. And one of the great goals of this nation's war is to restore public confidence in the airline industry, is to tell the traveling public, get on board, do your business around the country, fly and enjoy America's great destination spots. Get down to Disney World in Florida. Take your families and enjoy life the way we want it to be enjoyed. And we've got a role, the government's got a role. Not only do you have a role to play, which you're playing in such fine fashion.
And so we are both consumers and workers, but the pride we take is in our consumption. That's where we believe we have autonomy. And so it's as consumers that we make political judgments. Democrats are frustrated that they're not getting credit for rising wages and people's fatter bank accounts, but they're missing the psychological piece of this. If you're in a union and your union fights for and wins a raise, then you're going to recognize that it's the union that deserves credit for that. You and your brothers and sisters organized and fought together for better wages, and you won. If there are politicians who supported you and helped enforce labor laws along the way, you'd share some credit with those politicians. But if you're not in a union and your boss gives you a raise so you won't quit, or you quit your job and find a better paying one, there's basically zero chance you're going to give Democrats credit for that. From your perspective, you did that. And you're right. You've been working hard and you legitimately deserved that raise. But you were working hard in previous years too and didn't get a raise. The difference was full employment. And full employment is a function of policy. But it's too much to expect workers to connect that to their own individual raise. They feel like they deserved it. What they don't feel like they deserved is higher gas prices or a higher grocery bill. That's something that somebody else is doing to them. And the easiest person to punish is the party in power. Glenn Youngkin understood this. He talked about grocery prices constantly, promising to repeal a grocery tax to bring prices down. Now, he doesn't really think that'll solve the problem, but it shows voters that he understands it, and it asks voters to get mad at Democrats for it. Understanding that people see themselves as consumers first doesn't really lead to any useful political insights from a democratic socialist perspective, but it does chart a bit of a path forward in the short and long term. In the short term, getting the supply chain moving is key, and that likely requires a ton more visas for immigrant workers. Long term, the best way to deal with gas prices is to get rid of gas. And the more we can move to electric vehicles and buildings, then the less supply we'll be demanding, giving Mohammed bin Salman less of a chance to screw with us. And of course, workers need more unions to empower them on the job and to remind them that they are worth more than just their ability to buy tickets to go to Disney. So, Robbie, this is not the kind of analysis I actually want to share. I want this to be wrong. I would prefer that people think of themselves as workers first, and as wages are rising and unemployment is going down, they would reward the party who does that, so that whether it's Republicans or Democrats in the future parties are encouraged to enact policy that will raise wages and lower unemployment and increase the amount of power that workers have in the workplace. So I would prefer that to be the case. So I hope I'm wrong. Can you convince me I'm wrong?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I don't know that it's so bad. So we're all workers, but we're all workers in different industries. I'm not a factory worker, you're not a factory worker, but we are all consumers. We all buy things. So this is an argument I make sometimes against specific things to help specific industries, propping up one specific sector of the economy, which will raise the price of this or bias this kind of work or this kind of job, ends up not making a lot of sense because it helps those people, but we're all consumers. We're not all workers in that field.
And to the extent that has enduring popularity and power, it tends to be in industries that have cultural resonance as well. So lobstermen in New England, like the entire culture up there is likes the idea of supporting lobstering, not because they want to pay more for lobsters, and not because they want to make sure that the children of lobster men and women can go to nice colleges. It's because there's a connection between New England culture and lobstering, and they want that to remain. Same in Vermont, and Vermont, Wisconsin, other places where they have these milk co-ops that keep milk prices high. It's not because they really care that much about the well-being of the farmers. They want those farms to exist, because that farm culture is the way of life of these areas where I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay. Farming, crabbing, oystering, like that is the way of life of that area, and people want to maintain that, so they're okay propping up that industry, but it's not really for the workers. Right.
But you can take that to a silly degree. Like sure. My great, I'm not sure how many great grandfather, he repaired horse and buggies, right? And eventually that industry went bankrupt because of when cars became the thing.
Right.
And there was no bailout or no effort to protect workers in that field, nor should there have been, because it would be really stupid to have a government policy explicitly aimed at keeping this industry alive when it needs to die. So there's some level of artificial tinkering with the economy that the government does to protect specific firms because they have lobbying arms or unions or whatever that is not wise.
One particular irony of that fight, and you probably know this, the argument that the cars made, that the auto industry made, was that it would be good for pollution, because the horses were just pooping everywhere.
The manure.
Like everywhere you walked in New York City, you're stepping in horse
Cities
dung.
used to be filthy. Cities used to be absolutely
because horses
filthy.
were pooping everywhere.
Yes, yeah.
And so bring the cars, it'll clean everything up.
Yeah.
It'll also destroy the planet 100 years from now.
Destroy the whole planet, but
it won't stink on the way.
We can get a new planet. But I agree with your political analysis. I don't think, but people care about that. People do. I don't think it's wrong for people to take a lot of self-identity in the stuff that they buy or the life that they create at home. I think it is a good thing. Like some people on the left will knock, do you really need more cool stuff? Yeah, that is what makes, not reading a book by candlelight or something the same way people would have done thousands of years ago is an improvement, or not thousands of years ago, it's 1,000 years ago. That is an improvement that is not, should not be derided.
I do want one of those snazzy new e-readers for Christmas.
Yeah. We're you take an electric bike to the studio. I take an electric scooter. Yeah. We are benefited by technology.
None of us are immune from the false consciousness produced by the superstructure. No doubt about it.
All right, Ryan Marks over here.
Anyway, Team Rising joins us next. Stick around.